Hello, good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. Thank you very much for joining us today and joining me, Graham, and Tom. We'll be presenting the modern SMB, covering off why security is the non-negotiable foundation for every modern SMB, what SMBs really care about and how they're measured by stakeholders, and practical steps to align technology with business goals from compliance, cost control, customer success, and innovation. So, introductions. You've got two Grahams, we'll make this nice and confusing for you, and we've got a Tom to make things slightly less confusing. Quick bit about me. So I've been in the MSP space for around 8 years now, primarily technical role, and then moved over to Enforcer. So I was at a Microsoft-focused MSP in the south of the UK. I left as the head of technical pre-sales there, so running engagements, helping people get value out of Microsoft 365. And then at Enforcer, now the Microsoft 365 lead, so helping MSPs unlock the full potential of Microsoft 365 and Copilot. And over to you, Graham.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, we're going to have to maybe make me GS and you Graham, just to get easier between us. So yeah, hi everybody. I've been, I guess, in the MSP world. I mean, it's all I've done all my career. In 3 MSPs. The first was one I'd founded as a tech founder, actually, and probably, well, definitely a bit before MSP was a term. So I was very much in the sort of the break fix IT world. So sort of grew that business, evolved it into MSPs as we know now, and then exited that business in 2016. And from that point on, really, I was able to focus 100% on the sort of sales and marketing aspects of the role, rather than, I guess, being in a position a lot of MSP founders are, where we're sort of trying to juggle all the different hats from day to day. And really now what I'm doing now, this time actually pretty much to the day. A year or so back, I left MSP World, and earlier this year I started Growth Habits, really with an absolute focus on helping those MSPs that are still sort of founder-led sales, or smaller emerging sales teams, to really get their sales engine going.
Awesome, thanks GS. Now over to Tom.
Yeah, so I work for Infinity Group. I've been in the MSP space for about 15 years. Pretty much all of that with Infinity Group, with an organisation that's grown from, I think I was employee number 12 up to just shy of 200 where we are now. I've done everything at that particular MSP as it was growing, so covering everything from kind of field services originally, all the way through technical pre-sales and consulting, and acting as virtual CTOs for our clients, which I'm doing today, moonlighting in a back office. And before that, I was I worked for 5 years in a large corporate of about 10,000 employees, working through kind of IT service desk, cutting my teeth as the early part of my IT career.
Awesome. So all well versed, very MSP focused meeting today. So let's get into it. An evolving market. So here in front of you, hopefully, is reflective of how you've seen the MSP market over the last 20 years, everyone involved. So highlighting the increasingly rapid changes that the market needs to adapt to, which is quite exhausting. As you can see, this accelerated from 2015 onwards. And the 2020 really highlighted the need for remote working, Microsoft enter the modern workplace, and therefore increasing the demand for SKUs like Business Premium. Off the back of that, we saw MSSPs forming as security concerns around taking data home, working from home in a secure manner, obviously increased. And the move away from perimeter security, or at least not the move away, but the addition of, or the focus on identity security and the monetization of that through managed security services. Now, 2025, you can see we're now spoking off into 2 different areas. It's getting messy and or exciting, whichever way you look at it. So AI is in the mix, the introduction of managed intelligence providers, and the increasing customer expectation for you to deliver compliance and consultancy services. So really moving away from that traditional IT support role that you play within businesses, and hammering in that partnership methodology. And it's more important than ever to differentiate in a crowded market, and also a commoditized one. really highlighting the need to look at new solutions and constantly evolve. We can thank Microsoft for a lot of this change. I think that's fair to say. It's always been deeply embedded in everyone's ecosystem from back in the day. People have been buying box copies of Microsoft Office for forever and a day, and people have stuck with it. So that's typically why I believe that Microsoft's done quite well, because people like the product. But it's not just that now. It's a security platform and your productivity platform.
Graham, can I don't mind just maybe just add a point there?
Please.
Really just some context to maybe a couple of my slides later on. I think when we go back to the first part of your slide there, when we were IT support in that break fix model, and as we might, I guess, transitioned into that MSP model as we know it now, effectively what we did was our support revenue stream, which was very sort of up and down based on how much support we needed to provide to clients at that time, we moved into that recurring model, which obviously as MSPs is really what we're after. So, but what we do have now is still our project revenue streams that are still very lumpy, based on clearly the amount of projects we do. So, I personally have a belief that actually one of the things MSPs need to be thinking about as we move from sort of 2025 forward, so sort of the right side of your drawing there, is how we move that project revenue stream into a recurring project revenue stream. So I just want to leave that thought with people, and we'll pick back up on that later on.
I think all three of us will be hammering that home today, so I'll also be covering that. So yeah, it's good to see we're all aligned on that one.
Brilliant.
Awesome. So really, this is an opportunity for me to tell a story about what I saw in MSP. So having come from one, hopefully it'd be interesting for you guys to see my perspective working with SMBs. So where do I fit into this? I suppose I learned the hard way. I joined an MSP market just before the MSSP era, so I'm probably aging myself there. As a technical consultant, so I was technically focused. I was boots on the ground, getting on with it. Then I moved into technical pre-sales and obviously thought I knew it all. Then realised that SMB owners and leaders weren't excited as me about plumbing in new technologies, going in with in-tune projects. In what? It's not interesting to me. So I suppose it was that inflection point of what do SMBs actually want, actually need, what gets them going, what's going to get them onto that next project, onto that managed service. And this is what I believe that they want. So secure infrastructure, everyone wants to be secure, but typically SMBs don't care about your Microsofts, your SentinelOnes, your Mimecasts. It's a trust thing. They come to you because they trust you to make them secure and look after them. That's all that matters. Low costs, and there's no real data behind this. It's all a feeling. They need to feel like the amount of money they spend on IT overall is the right amount of money. They're getting a good value. If there's 100 users, they feel that $5,000 a month is a good amount of money. I'm making that up, but that just needs to feel right to them, which is irritating. And then the most important bit and the exciting piece that all of us will be talking about today is the IT that helps generate revenue. So the endpoint management, the wireless infrastructure that I was trying to sell them as the techie boy wasn't interesting to them. They didn't see those projects as helping them make money. That was a money sink. So how did we translate this into real value and get them on it? So I want to go through each of these three sections. There's obviously a story here, and it goes from the foundations. How do we get this right as a managed service? What's underlying that? How can we make the cost sensible so it's palatable to the customers, so more likely to convert them? And then touching on the generation of revenue there. So secure infrastructure. You're at a Microsoft titled webinar. Of course, it's Microsoft underneath it. So your customers aren't interested in your security stack. It's just that trust piece. But everyone needs to sleep at night. So this is for you. So how are you going to secure your customers to ensure them that we can all sleep well at night? And it's Microsoft. So when was the last time you evaluated your tech stack? Maybe this is one for Graham and Tom. How often in MSP did you guys evaluate your tech stack?
Not very often. Really, I mean, changing suppliers isn't easy, is it? So you don't keep switching from one to the other because you're just creating a whole load of back-end work for yourselves in doing that transition. I mean, we in the past, we were a Sophos Gold partner, and we threw everything in with them. I mean, it was a good product back in the day, one of the better ones, but we wouldn't have just upped sticks and moved somewhere else.
No, but this is what we're seeing in MSP. Speaking to people at Microsoft 365 all the time, that we've got tools stacking up that they've had for years. They've built trust with a vendor. They perceive to make money on it. It works for them. They're all of a similar level, but tool fatigue is real. Most MSPs have loads of them piling up, over 50 tools shared across the entire organization, and it's definitely a sensible time to consider consolidation. Yeah, the Microsoft stack is a very compelling offer, and within Microsoft 365 Business Premium, arguably there's everything you need for a modern SMB in there, including their productivity suite. So naturally, I got my Enforcer shirt on. It'd be silly not to mention this. Tools such as Enforcer do make this more viable for an MSP to be able to do. That's typically why people haven't considered the Microsoft stack, and it's that manageability perspective. But the underlying stack there is fantastic. And not only are you adopting something like an EDR in there, your identity protection, your endpoint protection, it becomes an XDR because we're sharing signals between the tools. So if you have got disparate tools, you've got your SentinelOnes and your Mimecasts, they can't talk to each other unless there's another third party doing it. And then we're introducing another tool. So keeping all of your eggs in the same basket is actually sensible on this occasion, which you won't hear that very often, but you're in safe hands with Microsoft here. 300,000 UK businesses already use Microsoft 365. So showing that trust there, again, going back to what we originally said, people trust, they like the tools. They've been using Microsoft Office for years. They're fully embedded in that platform. 80% of Fortune 500 use Microsoft 365. These are enterprise created tools. They're very high end. It's just that Microsoft in SMB have given us a sensible price entry point for Microsoft 365 Business Premium. And they don't stop there. They've got 20 billion committed between 2021 and 2026. And it's really showing with the rate of accelerated development of those tools. And this surprised me because everyone talks about AI agents and Microsoft push it harder than anyone else with Copilot. They've got 34,000 real life people working on their security stack now. So again, really showing that investment off. And this is an interesting one. So talking about how many people are embedded in the Microsoft 365 platform, and not just Microsoft 365, Microsoft in general. So every vendor will talk about how many security signals they process a day. Microsoft does the most. And that visibility of security signals across multiple platforms really helps them understand any zero-day threats and acting on those far quicker than any other vendor can. So a really compelling offer to help you guys sleep at night. And it wouldn't be a webinar if I didn't show you a Gartner quadrant. So here's one. And again, going back to the how quickly is Microsoft moving? If we look here, 2018 on the left-hand side, we're further down, and now we're almost in the top right with a new one being published very soon. So hopefully just above CrowdStrike, which would be awesome. And this is probably one for Tom, actually. Sorry to pick on you again, but Secure Score is a metric, Tom. How often do you use that internally at Infinity Group, and how does that resonate with your customers?
I mean, it's something that I was going to talk about a bit later, but I mean, it sort of drives the core of how we measure ourselves in terms of what we are delivering to our customers. And it's certainly the first thing we look at whenever we go to visit a new customer is where are you on this journey? Because it's the biggest indicator, it's benchmarked against industry standards. So it's not just something Microsoft have made up, it pulls back to the CIS controls, ISO 27001. It is telling you what you need to do without a shadow of a doubt.
And I think from an SMB perspective, this is a really helpful metric. You are X% secure. And I know there's nuances to it as a technical, someone with a technical background. Some of it is, slightly not true to life and requires some explanation. However, having a high secure score generally is a good thing. And I think we can all agree on that. And having something that can be simplified to show an SMB is not only a great selling tool. Now, you are currently X%. Our standard security service can get you up to X%, which is better, can really help you along that journey and help you win business off of other MSPs. As I said, everyone's using Microsoft 365. You will have this score there. And not only is it a selling tool, but this could help you get slightly better value cyber insurance. Microsoft lobby.
One of the key things for me with Secure Score, sorry to butt in, but it's not just a measure of what you've done to secure your environment, it's also a measure of how well you are maintaining that along the road, because it's very sensitive to things that you don't do.
Yeah.
You know, if you go through and you secure all your devices, but then you've got a big stack of them somewhere that haven't been turned on for months, then that is going to hurt your Secure Score. So it's pointing to your own maintenance regimes.
And it's not only that, I mean, just as we commit to maintain and patch servers over time, Patch Tuesdays comes to mind, we should be committing to maintaining, updating and improving our Microsoft 365 tenancies as Microsoft add in, in a really good way, loads of features that we need to keep on top of. And again, that's a differentiator in this crowded market for Microsoft 365. But something that other vendors don't necessarily give you, that holistic secure score covering identity, devices, and your other security functions. So I won't do a hands up, but I would assume that a lot of people in this webinar today lean heavily on the Microsoft 365 Business Premium stack. So even if you do have those third-party tools now, it does make financial sense, even if you're just using Intune or Entra ID P1, to take the entire Business Premium stack. But not a lot of people know just how much is in there, and that your customers will become aware that that is in there at some point because they're paying for it. But not only is it the productivity suite on the right hand side or the left hand side anymore, we've got everything on the right hand side from Intune. So device management, that could be a third party that's displaced that you're currently paying for. I'm thinking of the Jamps and the SOTIs and the AirWatches, if that exists in this world. And then you've got Entra ID P1. So looking after your identities, an absolute non-negotiable conditional access. You've got an endpoint protection tool in there through Microsoft Defender for Business, Microsoft Defender for Office 365, so displacing the Mimecast within your MSP. So we'll come on to costs, but it's amazing value to see how much you get in here. This is one to float. If you've been on the Enforcer website, you would have seen this, but I think it really resonates well with MSPs, and not a lot of MSPs are currently seeing Microsoft 365 in this way, but the Microsoft 365 tenant is the new server. Just like your Active Directory servers hosted your identities and your devices, the Microsoft 365 tenancy is doing that as well. So you should treat it with as much respect and attention as you did with your Windows Server updates back in the day. So there you go. I'll show you something with some nonsense IP addresses on here, but a lot of MSPs are in this mindset. They are there to protect the perimeter, and we still need to do this. A lot of people still have perimeter networks. They still have servers that need to be looked after. So this is still very much part of it. We should be doing that maintenance. We've got those managed firewall services. But in addition to, or instead of, you now have this mess to look after, your identity attack surface. Your identity, so graham.morrison@enforcer.com, holds the keys of the castle to a lot of information in the organization, a high level of entitlement. So it's so important that that identity is protected, and that identity lives within Microsoft 365. So you can see here everything that it's attached to: SaaS accounts, guest accounts, BYOD, SSO, so signing into other third-party pieces. Really important that we look after those identities, regardless of whether you adopt Microsoft 365 across your entire stack. The identity will be there. If people can sign into Outlook or Teams using Entra ID, we need to protect it. And hopefully this brings that to life a little bit. So on the left-hand side, those traditional tasks we've been doing as part of RMM deployments and backups. So Windows updates could be likened to doing configuration updates and maintenance in Microsoft 365. Data config and backup. We're backing up Microsoft 365. We also need to back up the config of that piece. So highlights the importance of looking after identities, treating it with respect, but also highlights the need for a tool like Enforcer. And why manage it? I'll throw a number at you that's very big. 50 updates in the last 12 months that were major and meaningful to MSP happened within Microsoft 365. So important that you guys keep on top of it, just as Tom was saying. So making sure there's no legacy devices sitting in there that haven't been turned on, keeping those updated and deleted if needed, nice housekeeping, and then ensuring that your 365 tenancies are updated, up to date, your secure scores kept nice and high, really highlights the importance of that regardless of what tools you choose to adopt. So what does this look like from a foundational perspective with an MSP? At the moment, you'll be buying third-party tools, and that will align to a service offering that you have. So you've got a Sentinel One, but that's been sold as an endpoint protection tool. This is how you could align that within a Microsoft 365 security practice. So sign-in protection, we can get rid of the Oktas and the Duos. We can use Entra ID P1, Defender for Office 365, displacing the Mimecast of this world, Defender for Business, endpoint protection. So all of this baked in to Microsoft 365 Business Premium. And this is what a service offering could look like aligned to those products there. But I do find, and Tom, maybe it'd be interesting to hear if you're using these licensing SKUs I'm just about to talk about, but a lot of MSPs like doing a baseline level of protection. So everyone gets this, you must be at this level. But if you want to go further up, we can offer you a separate tool for that. So Microsoft have that, and that is available within Business Premium. And that's the Defender suite and the Compliance suite. So if you find that the Business Premium offering isn't enough, or you need more, a larger business focus one, or someone who's in a regulated industry, at a low cost, you could bring in a higher level of product or licensing. Is that something you guys see happening a lot, Tom?
It is something that we see in the more mature businesses. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a there's a line you have to step over in terms of kind of leadership maturity before you get there. And certain industries, yes, there's quite a lot of valid requirement for Defender for Cloud apps, particularly in the world of creeping shadow AI, and Defender for Endpoint P2 in particular as well, where customers are sensitive to vulnerability management.
Yeah, and I think not only is there the technical reason to do this, it's that Microsoft showing that there's flexibility within their licensing SKUs aimed directly at SMB to make it really relevant to everyone in this call. And not only do they do it for Defender, but they also do it for Purview. So all the MSPs here who are going down the Copilot AI compliance journey, you can supplement what's already within Business Premium and just go slightly further and add in those E5 level features at a reasonable cost. So with Business Premium, the Purview suite and the Defender suite, you could be at an E5 level of security, but not at the E5 level cost. So hopefully I've convinced everyone on this call that consolidating on the Microsoft 365 stack is a fantastic option from a security perspective. But now it's going on to the low cost piece. So my introduction was focused around making the customer feel like they're getting a great value and offering that. So how can we do that, and how does Microsoft 365 play into that? And I think it goes back to the messaging that people have this licensing available. So at the moment, you've got Microsoft 365 Business Premium or another licensing tier, but you're also charging them for, I assume, passing on costs for RMM, endpoint protection, email protection, the list goes on. But your customers are already paying for Microsoft 365. And as we all love ROI, as MSPs, we love ROI. We want to get return on investment from those tools that are working hard. So do our customers. So we really need to make sure that everyone across the board understands there's a return on investment. And I think my time in technical pre-sales, this is what really pricked people's ears up when I spoke to them. You would speak to someone who had an incumbent MSP, they would have 365 Business Premium, which is great, but they would also have a host of other tools that they were paying separately for. So a really compelling conversation there was, what we can do is we can help you consolidate on those 365 tools you're already paying for, and perhaps negate the cost, or at least reduce the cost of these third-party tools over here, and bringing it into a managed service over here. So it can also do other things outside of your managed service there. And reducing the barrier for foundational requirements. I think maybe this is more focused on the people who haven't yet consolidated or at least started selling 365 Business Business Premium. So my conversations with customers who hadn't yet adopted the 365 Business Premium suite was, we're okay to pay the 20 odd pounds per user per month for it, but there's an uplift in consultancy for you to configure those new features. So perhaps you could find a way of pre-packaging some deployments so everyone has a baseline level of protection and security when they do move in there, and that's going to reduce that foundational, reduce the barrier to entry and make it more likely for people to move into that suite. And ultimately, the more people are on that suite, the more return on investment that you guys can get, because you can start using the bring your own license model. Bit of a plug there from Enforcer, but that Enforcer would be a really good way of pre-packaging those tools and getting them out there. I can see that this call says it's no longer being recorded, but no, it is. Cool. Just making sure it's being recorded for everyone who's asked. I can see that popping up. Another way of reducing the barrier to entry is, again, if we make sure that people are on 365 Business Premium, we can find a way of commoditizing it, getting people in there. We're more likely to get people on the same level of technology. So I won't be very specific, but we did have customers who had very old technology, and having people on support desk trying to manage an operating or a server operating system they've never seen before can be problematic, and that can take a lot of time. So especially for the guys in the audience who are offering like a per user per month, all you can eat with fair usage, it's really important that your customers are as standardized as possible on a specific stack. If they're bringing older technology, it's difficult to support, that's really difficult, but those are the customers that are difficult to bring up to the new technology. So if you can find a way of reducing the barrier to entry, as in pre-packaging 365 deployments, getting them on that licensing, it can save you money and it can save the customers money, with that perceived value improving as well. So we've covered off all of the foundational stuff. We've got everyone standardized on Microsoft 365. We understand it's going to help people get better return on investment on both ends if consolidating on that tool stack, bringing everyone up to a good level of security and technology in a supportable state. But IT for revenue growth, this was the bit I was missing when I moved into technical pre-sales. How did I get people into managed services? How did I get them excited to do project work that wasn't endpoint protection or device enrollment? Because I'm sad and I enjoy that, but business leaders, they want to understand that they're going to buy something that's going to help them generate more money or more efficiencies. So modern MSP, this is how Microsoft want us to see this, and ultimately what this is saying is we need to focus on business outcomes. So what is that business trying to achieve? How can we as a technology provider help them get there? So focusing on customer success instead of maintenance. The maintenance is a given. You know, if we look back at that original thing, the 2005 to 2015 when managed services came in, the maintenance was a given. We need to focus on customer success. We're moving away from servers. We've put there mostly because we know real life exists. People still have servers, but mostly consolidating on SaaS technologies. Zero trust, identity centric. Again, Microsoft 365 is going to help you there. Automating as much as possible, and Microsoft 365 Modern Workplace as your foundation. So what does this look like in real life? Here's some examples for me from real life. Going speaking to business owners and understanding what their business goals were. So I was working this, the one on the left hand side, Net Zero by 2030, was a large charity in Sussex that I work with, and one of their goals was to become net zero by 2030. So well, how can technology align to that to ensure you can meet that goal? So there's a measurable outcome there. So remote working is an obvious one there. How can we enable it? And that's Intune, Autopilot, and Teams Premium was a really viable option for them at the time. They didn't necessarily need to know that it was an Intune, Autopilot, or Teams Premium project they were buying. It was a remote working net zero by 2030 project with a measurable outcome, all powered by Microsoft 365 technologies delivered by the MSP. And then another one was a call center that I worked with, and they really wanted to reduce their operating costs. And two of their operating cost issues was a very large office in the UK and hiring people in the UK, but they needed to speak foreign languages. So for them, they could improve the operating hours of the organization they were running and just hire in country for lower salaries, but enable that through technology. So what they needed was an Intune, Autopilot, and a Defender project being done. They weren't buying that as a technology, they were buying that as a project, as an outcome from us with a measurable ROI. So that's when it became conversations that we could really have and resonated with the SMBs I was speaking to. But what does that look like in practice? And for us, it was strategic roadmaps. So we would engage with the organization, understand what their business goals were. So we weren't going cap in hand asking for project revenue. We had a conversation with the business owner or leadership to understand what they were trying to achieve. Have you got a roadmap? Most businesses you work with have at least an idea of where they want to be in 2 or 3 years. And then understanding the business goals will then allow you to go away and create a roadmap that aligns with the goals that they're trying to achieve. A really nice thing from here is that there's a clear ROI. If they're looking to reduce operational costs, they'll know just how much they want to reduce them by, even if it is just a percentage. So we can say this project will cost £10,000, but it's going to save you £50,000. There's 40 grand in the green there, which is fantastic. And then those drivers are coming from the business. So going back, not going out cap in hand and asking for project revenue, they're effectively feel like they're coming to us. It's a much nicer engagement with the C-suite of that organization. And then the way that was structured was a roadmap as a service. VCTO, Tom's ears will prick up here because he's done VCTO work. So based on those roadmaps, they typically have an end date. So if we want to complete something in 24 months' time, that's the roadmap we need to create. So we would do a high level scope of works. They need Intune, Autopilot, Copilot, increasing efficiencies. What we would estimate over 24 months, there's 120 days worth of work required, estimated. The customer could then commit to that 5 days per month. That's fantastic. As an MSP, we're then moving projects into a managed service agreement. So that annual recurring revenue or monthly recurring revenue that's committed and contracted. And it's really hard to find talent that can deliver these projects. So having these commitments in place can allow you to do that load planning within your team. You know that 5 days a month, you need someone who can do the Intune project. And then next quarter, it's going to be Autopilot or Defender. You've got that foresight and you understand where that load planning needs to happen. You can hire accordingly with confidence because that's contracted revenue. And this works really, really well. So covering off the foundations, setting up your security service, making sure you guys can sleep at night, then making sure that costs are sensible. So consolidating on the customer's licensing, fantastic, bring your own license, great tools within it. And then roadmap as a service, offering those project services as a managed service, and breaking that cost down for the customer as well is naturally very appealing in line with measurable ROI. Right, Graham, I think over to you, or GS, should I say?
Excellent, GS, yeah, thanks, GM. Let me just take control then.
Awesome,
yeah,
all
cool.
yours.
Got that. Perfect, thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's just a really interesting introduction and flow, and just seeing how the industry's changed, how customer requirements are changing really. So I just want to take sort of 3 or 4 slides just to, from I guess my role very much in the sales and marketing hat is really how we sort of package these and thinking about how our customers are going to buy these from us, these services from us, why are they going to buy from us over competitor MSPs, etc. So there's been a lot of talk really about business outcomes. We've talked about those today, and if we've been to any MSP events or vendor events, the last few years in MSP world, the business outcomes is been top of that agenda all the way through. I think part of this is about actually really understanding how we really immerse ourselves in our customers' world. It's very easy when we're in sort of the technical world that we're in and the MSP community that we're in to be I guess shaped and influenced, and to some degree a little bit blinded by what we see in our world. So it's really, really important to, as I put here, step into our our customers' shoes. What would make them say yes to our services? Because I think the challenge I see when I'm working with MSPs is come and work with us. We'll keep you secure. We've got great tool sets, great teams. that will help to keep you secure, improve your secure. And we've got the Microsoft Secure Score that we've touched on. I think the challenge is increasingly that's a very familiar story that we're hearing. So for me, it's about trying to make sure we step into our customer's shoes and really look at the results that matter to them. So thinking about how are they measured. There's I've got some examples on here. So the revenue, gross profit, happy teams, winning new customers. There's all these typical measures that we see, and it's making sure we tell the story within our packaging and our messaging out to the client as to how we're going to really help them achieve their business outcomes and their business objectives. But equally, to be thinking about the person who is effectively taking the decision to work with you, why they, their personal, reasons for doing this, their personal, accountability that they've got to their stakeholders, whether that's their board, whether it's their investors, their own customers, etc. So thinking about, how they're judged and how they have to demonstrate what they're doing. So that's really, trying to make sure that we get ourselves into our customers' shoes, so that we can help to differentiate ourselves that bit further from what is a very crowded marketplace. So how do we do that? I've touched on secure score and productivity score. If that's still a thing, I'm out of the tech side of MSPs these days, but we really need to differentiate ourselves. So the question I quite often ask the sort of the MSPs I'm working with is, when you ask your customers how they're going to determine the success or the impact of your MSP services to their business, what do they tell you? And I think it's really quite surprising for me that actually lots of MSPs haven't asked that question in that very direct way. And it's really interesting to see if you do that, what we're gonna see. Because if we're relying on secure score only, and secure score is a great tool, and we know it's got some some nuances, as you put it, Graham, a moment ago, but it's a great tool. Everybody's familiar with it. The insurance brokers are increasingly using that, so it's a tool we have to use as a benchmark. But I'm sure many of the audience here today are actually using secure score and talking about secure score. So by default, we're not differentiating ourselves. So we need to go that step further. So for example, let's just think if we were an MSP that's working with architects. I took a note of some sort of stats here. So what's important to them? Net fee income per employee. So effectively, revenue per employee. Their bid win rate, is important. Their design cycle time, their project throughput. These are things, and just as it is to an MSP, billable utilization. So it's really understanding what are the benchmarks, what are the KPIs that are important to them, because that's how their boards will be measuring, and the stakeholders in those businesses will be measuring the business outcomes. And that's the key point here we don't just want to be talking superficially about business outcomes, i.e. we're going to reduce your risk, or we're going to make you more secure, or we're going to make you more productive. We want to take it that next step further and understand how that actually is measured by the business or the decision makers, and bring that through. And I think the real potentially powerful part of this is how we as MSPs make ourselves accountable to that. So let's just say, for example, we were, and I'm just going to use security because that's the one we're all very familiar with. We go into a customer and we say, we're going to make you more secure. We're going to use secure score, and maybe there's some other metrics that we can use. And we're going to make sure we maintain this level for you, and we're going to do X, Y, Z for you, and we're going to ensure compliance with Cyber Essentials or ISO, whatever the standards may be. So how do you hold your MSP accountable to your customer that you will actually do that? Because that actually adds some really more powerful impact. It's almost, as I would call it, skin in the game. So just want to sort of suggest some things here about how you can really generally make yourself accountable. If you were a CTO, I mean, Tom's a sort of a virtual CTO working for Infinity on behalf of his clients. If you were an employed CTO, you would have a responsibility to your stakeholders, to your board. And if you failed in those, if you didn't maintain the compliance, the measures and the metrics that were required, your ultimately your role within that organization would be at risk. That's the ultimate accountability, isn't it? So I think it's about mindset. It's about really making sure that you understand what those true business outcomes are, how your customers are going to measure those at a customer level and at the sort of the point of contact, the role level, and how you're going to hold yourself to account for those to really put some skin in the game. Because if we can actually do that, that's a good level of differentiation in the market is now. So I think, and just to give you an example, in my role, the reason I started Growth Habits, just under a year or so back, and just talk broadly, I'm a fractional sales coach. I'm a fractional sales leader. So if I were to go to my MSP clients and say, okay, you're working with me, I'm going to help you grow your sales. That's the business outcome. I'm going to help you grow your sales, but that's very superficial. So what we do here is, we're going to help you grow our sales, and we align to some metrics. We set some sort of growth targets on those, and we make sure then that a percentage of our fee is very much aligned to that. If we fail, then we don't charge the fee in the same way. If we over succeed, then there's a sort of a bonus within that. So there's financial skin in the game to make sure that actually the delivery where we say we're going to have, the business outcome impact we say we're going to have, we actually have. And I think there's loads of opportunity within the MSP world to look at doing that. And I think there's one of the sort of final points I want to really come to is just the thinking about the buyer journey. How once you've got your services packaged and it's well differentiated and the things we've covered there, is how are you actually going to, how does buyers buy from you? I saw a stat, just look at this, a few months back. The typical MSP buyer now, for the first time, I think this actually was in 2024, for the first time it tipped over that more than half of the buyers will be in that sort of Gen Z, sort of age group. And they were born with technology. They buy differently. They expect to be able to go online and get all the information about your MSP without even having to pick up and have that conversation with a salesperson, as maybe we would have done 10, 15 years or so back. So we want to be thinking about how that buyer journey is, making sure that we, when we are interacting with our customers or our prospects, that we're leading it with all those business questions. There's all the business discovery questions. There's some great tools out there. Score App is one that I think is sort of quite heavily used within sort of the MSP community that we can use to sort of help people through their journey, but not only by asking questions that help us align the right service to their business outcomes, but can help to educate them along the way. And of course, that's available online without having to have the conversation, with a sales guy. Pricing on the website. Many MSPs still don't put pricing of your services on a website. I know in my sort of consumer world, as it were, if I'm looking to buy something and it's something I can buy online, then I may go to 3 or 4 websites to look around. But if I can't get the information I want, whether that be pricing, how it's delivered, how quickly it's delivered, instantly, I move away. I move to the next one that can provide that. So we just need to be thinking again about that buyer journey that we've got here. And I think really, really important, and very much so within the security sort of packaging and plans that we have. We've all had this where, you're our support company, don't you do support security as well? Well, I subscribe to this security plan. I just assume that did all security. Many MSPs have, a couple of security plans, or their plans have different levels of security with them. So it's really important to make sure, sort of the lower box here, that you make it really clear to the buyer that if they're choosing a lower level of plan, that you make it really clear what that plan doesn't include. Because that will just save the confusion, the potential embarrassment or awkwardness, down the line when it comes to light, they become aware that it wasn't there. And actually, HubSpot do this brilliantly. I don't know how many people use HubSpot, but you subscribe to a plan, but actually the sort of the user interface shows you all the features. They've just got padlocks on it, so it makes it really clear that you can't use that functionality, but it is there. So I think that the final thing is just really thinking about, as we touched on earlier, the future of the MSP. So trying to move that project revenue stream into a managed recurring revenue stream. And the numbers I've got here on the right, again, the £50 keep the lights on, that's very much your traditional MSP support type plan, which broadly speaking, I know some sell it for cheaper, but typically in the market, £50 is sort of around about the price for that. We're increasingly seeing if you've got the sort of the security capability in there, it's about reducing risk. That's £100. What we really want to be trying to move to now with sort of Copilot, AI, automation, all the productivity tools, is around being able to focus on that niche and really not superficially focus on a niche. So if you're in recruitment, you can talk superficially about Bullhorn, but really understanding the workflows and how cash is generated in that business, how they service what they do with their customers. So really understanding, as if you were operating in that business and running that business yourself, you really need to understand the details of that. And that's really almost to Tom's point, is the VCTO role would be doing that. You would have a responsibility to make sure you understand everything within that business so you can align the use of technology into the business outcomes. And if we can move to that, then we can push to the £150 plus of per user per month pricing. But importantly, to Graham's point and the slides a moment ago, that moves that that project revenue stream into a recurring revenue stream that not only has the benefits it has because it's recurring revenue and the stability of our own MSP, but helps with the resource and the peaks and troughs and the management that you've got. But equally, from a customer perspective, they're not faced with a £10,000, £20,000 one-off project fee, which becomes a barrier to doing and moving forward. They're confronted with a much lower fee, which is a lot easier to ultimately get signed off within the business and transition to. So it's a win-win for both sides. So I think there's a couple of things there I really just want to leave you with, thinking really clearly about how you're going to differentiate yourself and not just at a superficial business outcome level, but really tie it in deeply into your customers' business outcomes and measures. And if you can, tying that into some form of accountability, skin in the game, consequence that that gives really increased confidence to your customers that you really mean and do a good job of delivering what you do. And then thinking about making sure we're going into that real true sort of niche level with some sectors that we can really get into detail about and really have an impact at that sort of automation, AI side of things moving forward. So
awesome, thanks, Graham.
Thanks.
Yeah, that was really interesting. The buying habits piece was really interesting. Hadn't thought about how Gen Z is really changing the way that people buy products and services. Yeah. Well, over to Tom now to tell us how it all works in real life.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, as a guest speaker here, really as an organisation that has tried and I believe succeeded relatively well in doing what we've been talking about here. Some backstory on us: we began as a traditional MSP. Those are our original roots. But alongside that, we've got a very mature modern work consultancy practice and an organically grown dynamics practice within the business. You might be able to see on my background up there that yesterday we were announced Partner of the Year award winners for Microsoft Business Central. So we're kind of riding a wave of happiness at the moment, but it does kind of show that where we push that kind of consultative approach to our customers, and because of our kind of broad range of skills across the Microsoft stack, we have become very Microsoft pure play in what we do across infrastructure, modern work, business applications, all the way through. And that kind of consultative approach has evolved from doing break fix and reactive support. Because in many cases, we're not just providing desktop infrastructure or network support, we're providing CRM, finance, ERP solutions all across a common platform. So because of that, because the user identities are spread all the way through all of those solutions, we had a need really to create some repeatable, initially kind of pre-canned consultative pieces of work that we could use, particularly after the launch of Business Premium, that helped us to standardize our client base, because our support desk can't log into loads and loads of different tenants and find all those tenants configured in a different way, chasing different problems through those tenants. They need to be the same. So we've got an opportunity there to standardize, lift some of the weight off of our own service desk, but also improve the client security stance, their productivity capabilities, and remove the buckshot of third-party tools that we've been using to deliver any kind of security to them in the past. And when Microsoft wrapped Defender for Business into Business Premium, it really sort of came into its own as a complete all-in solution. So we set ourselves that initial objective of creating these kind of reusable pieces of professional services deployment, but it made more sense for us to set ourselves a slightly wider objective of maximizing utilization and value within the Business Premium license, and then keeping that evergreen. I think, as Graham M said earlier, you know, the Microsoft stack is evolving all of the time, so you can't just set and forget. You can't do a piece of professional services work once and then just say, right, your environment is secure, because it just won't remain that way. So we said that we wanted to maintain an organization's secure score between 70 and 80%, and we want to get it there, and then we want to hold it there over time. And the only way that we can do that is by evolving what we're doing as part of a managed service. And the majority of the clients we work with, they're either cloud only already, or they're transitioning to the cloud model. And so it kind of makes sense that we maintain their stance within that range, within secure score. You know, in the old world, we were hardening domain controllers, we were delivering updates on servers on a regular schedule. You know, the tenant has replaced that. That's the source of all of their identity protection, their group management, device management. You know, there's no group policy anymore. If we're ignoring the security of the tenant, it's as though we're just ignoring the security of a domain controller in the end. And the landscape and tooling is evolving much faster within the cloud than it ever was within the server environment. And if we don't look after that, then our service desk, they're going to be getting shouted at by customers who are blaming us for not having kept pace. So, you know, designing a solution within Microsoft 365 that's a kind of a one size fits nearly all isn't particularly difficult. That's fairly straightforward to do, because you're just saying we just need to bring everyone up to a definitive point, and then we're happy that that's the level that everybody has to be at, and there's always additional things that you can bolt onto the side of that to make it better. Security is never done, but at least if everybody up to that point is exactly the same, then we can alleviate a lot of our typical worries. And like I say, designing that is easy, but then deploying it and maintaining it at scale are very, very difficult, or they were. You know, we hoped that Microsoft 365 Lighthouse would deliver that solution for us. We went through other tools like Microsoft 365 Desired State Configuration, and eventually we started deploying our solutions using a set of homegrown scripts and JSON templates and things like that we pulled from like a source tenant, and we delivered into a target tenant. And that kind of got us off the ground, but it never fixed any of our ongoing management challenges. And you know, back in, I think it was 2023, we originally crossed paths with Enforcer, and found the solution to our ongoing management problem, because you can't convert the professional services offer into a managed service until you've got, as Graham has said, you know, something that you can promise to your clients, some skin in the game, something that you can hold yourself to, be accountable for as part of that service. You can't convert your professional services into recursive revenue until you've got that in there as well. So, you know, utilizing Enforcer, we're able to, we still have to obviously have the knowledge and the ability to chase the Microsoft technology and update our baselines and keep ourselves up to date on where things are changing, but we can then push all of those changes at scale out to our clients en masse on a regular basis, keep our clients up with the latest security changes. There's other things you have to do in there, you know, like I was saying, stale users, stale devices, keeping pace with changes within organizations. That's part of normal process. But the technology we can keep up to date at scale. And you know, the result is that we've maximized value within the business premium license, and you know, extending that out into the E5 license if necessary, and maximized the client's return on investment in the Microsoft 365 stack. We've shed all of our other tools that we were using within the ecosystem and centralized it around a set of products that all share their signals with each other. They will talk to each other and provide much greater visibility and management capability, all from what will very soon be a single portal. And that helps us maintain alignment to cybersecurity standards like Cyber Essentials. You know, when our clients run round to their renewals, we can go through the renewals with absolutely minimal manual intervention, because we've been keeping them up at the right level all the way through the period. And you know, as a result, now we can deliver a significant amount of the technical controls that are required by a standard like Cyber Essentials through the Microsoft stack. And then via tools like Enforcer, we can see at a glance where that tenant is at in its journey. We know if somebody has made a change that's causing it to start to slip, or there's some there's some stale information starting to creep into that tenant that we need to clear out. You know, overall, using the Microsoft tooling, particularly combined with Enforcer, we are genuinely able to do quite a lot more with quite a lot less. And we've taken what was a disparate kind of tool set, professional services deployments, converted all of that into recursive revenue.
That's awesome. Thanks, Tom. It's great. It's great to hear it working in practice. Graham and I are finding it very validating that we're barking up the right tree here.
Well, the interesting thing is that, you know, particularly when we first crossed paths with Enforcer, it's like someone knew we had this problem.
Yeah.
Because we had a problem. We're like, no one solved this problem. But you know, it was interesting that suddenly there was this. Okay, you know, we're going down the right track because people are designing solutions to deal with the problems that we're running into.
The guys must have had their crystal ball out, looking into your mind there. Thanks very much for that, Tom. We are coming to end of time now, so I'll move on to questions. I can't see that there's anything in Q&A, and I have given people a very polite prod in chat. So we might give you a minute or so just to prod anything in there. Maybe, Graham, have you got any closing thoughts before we go to Q&A?
I think I really just sort of pick up on, I guess, Tom's experience, you know, at Infinity, and I suspect that the dynamic of the relationship between Infinity and your sort of your clients will have changed and continue to change as you go through that. I think it's a big challenge we have in MSP world, isn't it? You know, many SMBs, you know, maybe even just as recently as maybe 10 years or so back, you know, they outsource to an MSP for support. It's keeping the lights on because that's where the infrastructure was. So of course, if they are looking to change, or just considering their options, that's what's in their mindset, because they don't know what they don't know. So we have a big responsibility within the MSP community to sort of help re-educate them as to what we do. And I suspect that's probably
that's certainly true. Yeah, I mean, the greatest challenge that we have had all the way through it is explaining to people why they need to care. Because you know, they in the past, particularly in the SMB space more than anywhere else, you know, it's like, well, you sell us Sophos or Bitdefender, so you do our security, don't you? And it's like, well, no, we sell you an antivirus tool. We don't do your security. And, you know, it's not written into the contract that we are going to do that we'll be responsible for that. We're on a kind of a best endeavors or, you know, reactive model here. It's down to you and your users not to be silly to stop a security incident happening. And you can't leave it on that level of trust. And you can't leave any of that to assumption. It's got to be clear to them that, you know, it's your business. You are the one who signed the Microsoft customer agreement. It is a shared responsibility model. We can help you with that, but you're the one who carries the can. So why don't we take some of that off you and solve that problem for you?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Good.
Brilliant. Well, there's no Q&A in there. We've obviously done a fantastic job of being very clear with what we're trying to get across. So yeah, GS, Tom, thanks so much for joining us today. And thank you everyone in the audience for spending so much time with us. I hope you found it really useful and we can speak to you all soon. So I'll end it there. Thanks very much, everyone.
That's great.
Thanks everybody.
Cheers.
Thanks
Bye.
for the invite.
Bye.